Before Santa watched children, something else did. Long before Christmas trees and stockings, winter belonged to gods who judged, spirits who wandered, and creatures that punished the wicked. Tonight, we strip Christmas down to its ancient roots when Yule ruled the darkest nights and fear was part of the celebration. This is Christmas before Santa.
Welcome to ParaTruth Reborn, the Christmas edition.
God, I love that intro. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of ParaTruth Reborn. We are live on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast, and United Public Radio Network. My name is Justin.
And I'm Erik. And tonight, we want to give a special shout out, of course, to our friend Kat Ward and her incredible show, Paranormal Heart. You can join her every Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as she delves into the world of the paranormal with guests from around the world. Earlier tonight, we joined her for her annual Christmas episode titled Haunted Christmas Gifts and Creepy Traditions from Around the World with yours truly. So if you missed it, make sure you check out the archive here on UPRN and everywhere you find your favorite podcasts. We'll also have a link to that specific episode in the comment section below.
All right, folks. Tonight, we are talking Yule gods, and of course getting into some of the stuff we've gotten to in the past, like Krampus, Perkta, the Yule cat, all those great creatures. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, talked about Yule and what it was, the traditions there. Now Yule, we'll kind of give a brief overview here. The ancient Germanic Norse winter solstice festival celebrating the sun's rebirth and Christmas, the Christian holiday for Jesus' birth, overlapped significantly as Christianity absorbed Yule traditions to ease conversion, resulting in shared customs like the Yule log, which is now kind of a cake or more of a decoration than actually burning it. Evergreen decorations like the Christmas tree and the wreaths, even holly and mistletoe, I believe, came from Yule. Feasting, gift giving, and festive lights, all reinterpreted with Christian symbolism of light and new life around the December 25th date. Christian missionaries placed Christmas on December 25th, although that, of course, has been speculated that that wasn't even close to Jesus' birthday, but they repurposed it to the 25th to coincide with Yule, and making conversion easier to blending festivals. Now, the different symbols that were reinterpreted into Christmas, like I mentioned earlier, the Yule log became the Christmas cake or the Christmas log, first representing Christ, the light of the world. Evergreens, trees and wreaths symbolizes eternal life in Christ. Feasting or gifts continued, now tied to the biblical stories and charity. The Yule goat, which I don't know that we ever went over. They were made out of straw figures, became a companion counterpart to Santa, maybe where the reindeers came from. And Odin evolved into figures like Father Christmas and Santa Claus. Today's Christmas incorporates many of these Yule elements, allowing for a blend of pagan and Christian traditions, from the festive tree to the Yule log cake, marking a deep historical continuity in winter celebrations. Winter solstice as a time of fear, death, and rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
The winter solstice is, obviously we've talked about this a couple of times over this past month. And the winter solstice is something that is very similarly tied to the autumn solstice, right? So back in Halloween, we celebrate the same thing. This idea of fear, death, and rebirth is when the solstice begins. But the winter solstice here is a bit different because we're talking about a frozen time. At least it's represented as the frozen time. It's when everything ices over, everything dies, everything that you consider beauty, right, is now kind of ugly, shedding its leaves and flowers and whatnot, right? So, one thing I do want to mention though before we go on here, or before I continue on here, um, regarding Jesus's birthday on December 25th, you're right. It isn't There is a lot of speculation that Jesus wasn't actually born around December, right? So instead, it's more likely that he was born around springtime. We're talking somewhere between March and May, uh,
Hmm.
often falling somewhere within April, which, as you know, is usually when we celebrate Easter. And because of that, Christianity couldn't really, I shouldn't say Christianity, but Christians didn't really want to coincide two very important aspects of Christ in the same month, his birth, but also his death. So, taking the opportunity to shift it back to December, right around the Yule time, to help bridge the gap between the Christian faith and the faiths of old, primarily the Norse belief system. They were able to kind of connect with those people and help share the story of Christ through elements that they had already known and cherished, and were able to hence create what we know today as modern Christmas, which celebrates Christ.
Mm.
But yeah, so there is a little gap between when Jesus' actual birthday was versus when where it currently is held as a holiday. Now, regarding the Yule or the winter solstice, the winter solstice is really the longest night of the year. It symbolizes fear, death, and rebirth as the sun dies before its rebirth, representing a natural cycle of ending and new beginnings. Now, a time for letting go of the old, which is in this case fear, habits, or even grief, and to make way for growth, renewal, and planting seeds for the future. It's seen across cultures in rituals like the Yule log or happy soil ceremonies, reflecting a universal theme of transformation from darkness to light. Now, one thing that's really intriguing. This is why we consider this an important day in terms of the solstice, is because the solstice being the longest night of the year, the very next day, the very next night actually ends up being shorter than the night prior. And so is the case every night going forward until the summer solstice, right? So now we're gaining more time, more light every single day until the summer solstice, which happens obviously in the summer. Um, and so that's the idea of light being rebirthed or the sun being rebirthed. Now, in terms of fear and darkness, the death phase, we'll go a little deeper into this. The sun's fading in particular, it's this deep darkness of the solstice which evokes primal fears, often mirroring ancient anxieties about the world ending or light disappearing forever, as once seen in Adam's fear of the first sunset. Now, what is Adam's fear of the first sunset? Well, the story of Adam's fear states that upon the first setting of the sun, Adam thought the world was ending due to his sin of eating the fruit of the tree of good and evil, which brought him anxiety and fear, and therefore led him into a night of fasting and prayer, upon which, as the sun rose the following day, Adam believed it was due to his repentance. But the story itself, however, isn't biblical, but instead is actually an idea formed through extra biblical traditions. In this case, a rich theme from Jewish midrash, which is basically an interpretive story. And we see this a lot in many accounts throughout scriptures too. But in primarily, we're talking about the Apocrypha. So these are stories that exist
Mhm.
outside of the Bible itself and are deemed as being incredible, as being literal pieces of the Lord's word. And that there's all kinds of different nuances as to why those were chosen as apocrypha and not included into the book of the Bible, which at one point some of these apocrypha were. The Catholic Bible in particular still holds some of these apocrypha, or most of them, within the book itself, but they're still separated from the initial 66 books. Now, another thing that we consider here is the mythological fears. Some traditions associate the solstice with chaos, like the sea monster Leviathan, which I'm sure many of you know of, or even spectral figures like Odin's wild hunt, representing the forces of winter and the unknown. And then there's this idea of internal darkness. Metaphorically speaking, of course, this is a time to face personal shadows, grief, doubts, and fears, acknowledging them as a necessary part of the cycle. And this is something that we start to see in mentalism, right? So we started to see this in psychology, this idea of shadow work, where we look within ourselves and try to correlate our our troubles, our troubles, with the seasons itself. So as we go through the winter solstice, we take the time to reflect on the things that are negative or dark about ourselves. And then as the light increases every day, we spend those days learning to rebirth from those difficulties or those troubles, the grief, the doubt, the fears, etc., and become stronger. Now, on the flip side, there is rebirth and renewal. And this is where the return of light exists. And this is everything that happens after the solstice. Now, the sun's return in particular is the solstice marks the turning point when the sun begins its return, symbolizing hope and the promise that light will always conquer darkness, right? So we've seen for a while here that darkness was kind of holding the light down. It was winning for a while there, but here we're seeing the sun come back and start to conquer the dark. And typically the light stands against the dark much longer than the dark stands over the light. So when we talk about the seasons, depending on where you live within the world, I suppose it's probably a little different if you're further north or south. Um, and then there's this cycle of transformation, and it's a powerful reminder that endings, like the death of the older year, create space for new life, such as rebirth of the new year, much like seeds dormant in winter. And this is where we get the idea of New Year's resolutions, the idea to birth something new of ourselves. And then we have rituals of renewal. In cultures, there are a number of cultures that perform ceremonies like lighting fires or singing or even feasting to welcome the returning light and plant intentions for the coming year, focusing on spiritual rebirth and a new authentic living. So this is something that like we strive to renew and then keep that, right? We want to keep that an authentic life with us, not just, wear it for a couple of weeks or a year or whatever and throw it away. No, we want to use this opportunity to build something new and hold on to it. It's supposed to be a change for the better. Now, when it comes to connecting fear, death, and rebirth, it's very simple and yet intricate. The first thing you want to do is embrace the whole. The solstice teaches us that darkness and light, death and rebirth, are inseparable parts of a single sacred whole. We're talking about a balance, right? We're talking about the yin and the yang. On top of that, we honor sacrifice because this is a time in which we release burdens, old selves, and things that no longer serve us, hence death and sacrifice, to be reborn into a more authentic life. And then, of course, there's nature's mirror, the natural world's cycle of dormancy and resurgence, which provides a blueprint for personal and spiritual renewal because we can literally see everything around us dying and rebirthing season after season.
Now, I mean, I asked myself this, and I'm sure you guys are probably asking, why did darkness matter more than light back then? Because we do still cherish the light now, um, but back then there was a reason for these traditions. Darkness mattered more at the winter solstice because it represented the year's deep rest, a necessary period of reflection. Um, revitalization and nurturing new beginnings. making the eventual return of light a powerful symbol of rebirth, hope, and life's cyclical victory over dormancy, with ancient cultures seeing it as a second time for inner work and acknowledging for independence of light and shadow. And it does make sense why that Christ became the light during this time, because it we were already celebrating this type of thing going on in other cultures.
Right. Oh, I hit a bunch of buttons and now everything's getting messed up. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to the common historian. Thank you for being here and watching today.
100%.
All right, please continue.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the Yule and winter deities. And this is something that we were back and forth about discussing this month, but we actually put it to a poll and had quite a few of you respond, wanted to hear more about the winter deities this time around. So we figured why not for the Christmas episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's begin first and foremost with probably the most famous figure in Norse mythology. His name is, of course, Odin, the Norse Allfather. Uh, he basically heavily influenced Santa Claus, particularly through his midwinter role, leading the chaotic wild hunt, observing mankind via his ravens, much like Santa's elves or spies do, and even riding a horse known as Sleipnir, who, while also rewarding and punishing people with treats and abductions, and being called the Yule Father. Now, these ancient myths merge with St. Nicholas traditions, softening Odin's fearsome hunt into Santa Claus' cheerful gift giving, creating the modern figure known for winter journeys, a beard, and watching children. Now, for those of you who don't know, St. Nicholas obviously isn't just a figurative word here. He is a fictional character in the sense of Santa Claus, he is, but Saint Nicholas is actually, or was actually, a Christian bishop who often gifted children with a bunch of, well, gifts. So Christianity ended up bringing him into the mix to kind of trade off Odin. Now, there's also Frigg, which is the powerful Norse queen of the gods, wife of Odin, representing the heart of the home, family, and motherhood, overseeing marriage, childbirth, and domestic harmony, while also embodying deep wisdom, foresight, because she knows fate but doesn't speak it, and protection, especially for children, linking her to the quiet strength of the hearth, winter survival, and the weaving of destiny. Her essence is in nurturing, inner strength, and guiding fate through quiet influence, much like the steady warmth of a hearth.
Now, there's a lot of other gods, but I love that it brought up Balder, because he was one of my favorite Norse gods when I learned about the Norse gods. Balder's myth centered on his death by mistletoe and eventual rebirth, strongly mirrors winter solstice themes of death, in other words, the darkest day, and rebirth, the return of light or the sun, linking him to Yule, the Norse festival of light and renewal, where bonfires and trees symbolized hope for the sun's return, and connecting Balder, god of light, to the year's cyclical death and rebirth, much like a sun god. If I have to say cyclical one more time during this, I might get tongue tied. Um, the Holly King and Oak King are symbolic figures in pagan traditions, representing the eternal cycle of light and darkness, life and death, ruling for half the year, each battling at the solstices for dominance and embodying nature's seasonal changes as the wheel turns. I was trying to remember. There is a Christmas claymation movie that came out when we were younger.
Hmm.
Do you remember the name of it? But it had it, they weren't called the Holly King and the Oak King, but it was like Mr. Frost and um
The heat miser and the snow miser.
yeah, that's what those were supposed to represent was these two characters
I'm
here.
pretty sure it's what Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Was it?
I think so. I
I
don't know if
thought
it
it was
was.
a
I
separate.
don't know if it was Rudolph's Shiny New Year, possibly, but either way, it was a Rudolph.
Okay, I thought it was a different one altogether.
Nope, I don't believe so.
Um, but the Oak King, light growth, reigns from winter solstice, Yule to summer solstice, Litha, where he's defeated by the returning Holly King, Dark and Rest, who rules until Yule, when the Oak King is reborn, ensuring the perpetual return of light and life after darkness. Now, sacrifice, offerings, and fear versus comfort during this time. Um, One thing that you really see this in is in a lot of the Yule gods and traditions. And we'll talk about this when we get into Krampus and Perkta and stuff. Um, in this day and age, we don't see at least the fear versus the comfort. We talked about this on Cat Show that, in today's day and age, they're actually really trying to eliminate Santa altogether because it's lying to your children.
Right.
Um, and on top of that, Santa used to, I don't know if those that still use Santa uh, say that, oh, you're going to get coal in your stocking instead of presents, which would have been a punishment or fear of punishment at the time.
Right.
Um, Now, how do you think the gods became more symbolic instead of worship, the Yule gods specifically?
I mean, I think it's just a change of culture. Like we said earlier in the show, as I mean, starting first and foremost, when we talk about religion, right? When we have the Christian faith kind of move in and start to mend some of its beliefs along with Norse beliefs to create the Christmas story,
Mhm.
in this case, or at least to help adapt the Christmas story, right? So again, Christianity at the time was trying to build a bridge to the Norse people, those who believed in the Norse gods. And they did that through the birth of Jesus because there were a lot of similarities in terms of the elements that were used during this time. And so we see a lot of correlation between them. And it's what helped bridge that gap and bring people of the Norse belief system into the Christian faith. It helped them kind of shift into it a little easier, which made it more understandable, easier for them to swallow, if you will. And we see the same thing also during St. Patty's Day, right? Because St. Patrick did something very similar by using the four-leaf or the three-leaf clover in Ireland to represent the Holy Trinity. And he also took the Celtic cross. He created the Celtic cross by combining the cross along with the symbol of their sun god and placing it in the middle of the cross. And so we see a combination of two gods in this system, but it became a symbol of the Christian faith, and it helped those people shift again from the belief system in Ireland into the Christian faith. So we see that time and time again throughout really every continent, every country, at least most of them. There are so many places that have yet to hear the story of Jesus at all, which is crazy probably to most of us since we hear it so often, probably, or at least relatively we know who he is. Um, but I think with that, along with this idea of Santa, the more that people started to dive into or delve into Santa Claus and the mythology behind Christmas, some of these other characters just slowly started to fade away. As you're shifting from one faith to another, you kind of let go of the old, carry on the new, right? That's the whole theme of today's episode, really. And so
Mhm.
the same thing was happening. These figures that were once strong in Norse mythology became more of a ghost, a shadow of what once was, and started to take on new life in fictional stories and movies, right? Marvel films is a big one. Uh, and that's pretty much just that's how it happened. They just became stories eventually.
And that makes a lot of sense. Now, do these gods still exist today? Did they ever? that's the real question. But that is interesting that you don't hear much of them as much anymore since Christianity has kind of taken over.
Right.
So we're gonna get into our favorite stuff for Christmas time, and that is Christmas creatures and spirits. We've talked about them several times over the however many years we've been doing this now. Let's see, 19 or 2009 to 2025, 18 years, 17 years, somewhere in there. Um, Krampus is a horned half goat, half demon figure from Central European Alpine folklore who serves as the menacing companion to St. Nicholas, punishing misbehaving children with birch branches or by dragging them to hell, contrasting with what St. Nicholas did with gift giving for good kids. Now, like I mentioned earlier, Krampus has kind of gone away in a lot of cultures, and it's more Santa punishes the bad kids by giving them coals in their stockings. Um, Now there's Perkta, or she's also known as Frau Perkta, is a figure from Alpine folklore, a goddess witch associated with winter s- spinning and the 12 days of Christmas, December 25th to January 6th, who judges households' behavior, rewarding the diligent with coins, but gruesomely punishing the lazy by slitting their bellies and stuffing them with straw and pebbles. She embodies a dual nature, appearing beautiful and bright, or as frightening and hag-like creature, often with birds' feet. Um, and that getting stuffed with straw and pebbles, if you didn't do the right thing, sounds like a horrible punishment to
I mean, I
me.
don't. When you're slitting somebody's belly open, I don't know if there's much life left by the time she gets all pebbles.
Yeah.
In there. I guess it depends. They got some brutal, scary characters. Why is everything so horrifying?
Do you like that I gave you your favorite
Of course I
to
do.
talk about?
Naturally. Uh, so, of course, there's another very famous creature that actually is becoming more and more popular, considering the times we live in and the numerous amount of memes, videos, etc., that we see on TV or on social media, and that is a character known as it's the Yola Katurin. The Yola Katurin is how you actually pronounce this really long, kind of crazy name. And that is, in English, the Yule cat, right? We all love cats, at least some of us, or most of us, or maybe you don't love cats at all, but that's okay because this one will eat you for it. Because it is a dark Icelandic folklore tale about a giant vicious cat that prowls the snowy countryside at Christmas, eating people who haven't received new clothes by Christmas Eve, serving as a cautionary tale to encourage hard work, especially in wool production, and a companion to the troll-like Yule lads. It is also a tale spun to convince children, in particular, to spend their allowances on something useful, like clothing, rather than spoiling the money on junk. The Yule Cat checks windows for new garments, and if a person has none, it first devours their dinner, and then it devours the people. Um, I don't know what happens if the Yule Cat, gets there after they've eaten dinner. Is there anything left to eat? I don't know.
Well, usually back then they were ringing the dinner bell, so the cat probably heard that.
Well, that's very possible. Next up on the list is I think it's the Tomte,
Yeah.
and then that's the Swedish name, and then there's also the Nissi, which is a Norwegian or Danish name. They're both similar figures from also Nordic folklore, basically small, bearded, gnome-like guardians of the farm and household, typically wearing a red cap and gray clothes, who protect the home but can be mischievous if displeased, often demanding a bowl of rice porridge on Christmas Eve for their good service. Now, they are essentially the same creature, with Tomte meaning homestead man from Tomt, and Nissi linked to the name Nils. or Nicholas.
And you see a lot of similarities there to what we see as Chris or Santa Claus today,
Yes,
or
100%.
Saint Nicholas.
Yeah, and we know, like, the early history of Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas is often been described as being an elf-like being, not typically short, but still elf ears, just elfish, I should say, or dwarfish. Um, and he often wore green or blue uniforms or clothing. It wasn't until Coca-Cola decided to make an ad also showing a picture of Santa Claus, but in that case, they changed his colors from the typical green or blue colors scheme to the Coca-Cola colors, which is red and white. And because of the commercialization of Coca-Cola, that just kind of stood at the test of time, and Santa's been red and white ever since.
Hmm.
Now, there are a few things that we can kind of learn from these various characters, right? Krampus, Perkta or Frau Perkta, the Yule Cat, Tante or Nissi. And the big thing here that you haven't noticed, they're all kind of scary, is simply using fear as a teaching tool. Now, this is something obviously modern times, at least most people don't encourage, right? Because
Yeah.
fear often creates problems, very negative problems. But during the early days of the Yule lore, fear was very important. I mean, even growing up as a kid, I was often used, often had fear used to kind of
Oh, we all did
us,
when,
right?
I mean, our generation and the generations before us.
Yeah, 100%. And now we're seeing that less and less nowadays. And I think to an extent, it's a good thing, but I think it's also been, I think they went a little too far with it because now
Well,
it,
that's why it's kind of gotten to where it is today, where raising a kid is more so trying to understand emotion and stuff like that, the ones that the kids are going through.
right.
But there is a very fine line, and unfortunately, that meant there's been so many people that have crossed it that we have to kind of switch gears on how you treat kids. And the generations over the years have kind of changed. You know, I'm a what they call a uh I'm a millennial, but there's a certain term for me because I'm just on the cusp of Gen X and millennial. Um Geriatric millennial, I think, something like that. But I came around the time that, things were changing just a little bit in how you raise your kids. And but I still remember the times of, fear being a punishment.
Yeah. Uh, Now, another thing that we can consider here is that monsters were used to enforce morality. I can think of a number of reasons why that might be the case,
Yeah.
but I think the big one is primarily that people use the imagination to strike the fear and create this aspect of moral well-being. Monsters are simply scary, right? I mean, anyone can say, "Oh, if you do this wrong, then your father's going to, right? Or your mother's going to." It becomes old after a while. But if you tell people about this monster, this creature that is beyond description, disgusting, grotesque, angry, full of hate and violence, who's just going to eat and kill, etc. Well, now you're starting to really dig deep into the soul at this point and find that fear factor, right? We're striking a chord. And so monsters are often used as a sense of a morality tool. And we even see it through a number of other cultures and belief systems. Christianity even uses fear in some cases throughout the Bible to represent some of these things. Think of Leviathan, even the behemoth. These are characters that were used to describe a monster in order to enforce some sort of morality.
Hmm.
And then we have this idea of how Christianity softened or demonized some of these creatures, right? And just the belief system of the Yule. Now, Christianity softened pagan winter traditions by simply co-opting them, giving them a new Christian meaning to ease conversion, like I said earlier. Now, the linking of the solstice birth of light to Jesus as the light of the world and incorporating symbols like holly, evergreens, Yule logs into Christian decor and evolving figures, even like Odin into Santa Claus, were often done to make the new faith more familiar and appealing to pagan converts. The process called enculturation replaced pagan significance with Christian ones, allowing familiar customs to continue but with a new focus. And this is very important when it comes to teaching anybody anything, really. Like, this is a concept that defies time at this point because uh, it's an ancient thing. We often want to teach people new things, and we do that by showing them how to use their current skills to produce new stuff, right? And so this has been done through time over and over again, and particularly within belief systems, and not just Christianity, but basically every single belief system out there, every faith, every religion has done this at some point or another.
Mhm. Now, how these beings became Santa, that's the $1,000,000 question, because the Santa that we know today is not Saint Nicholas, the saint of Catholicism. He's also not the original teachings of what Santa Claus was. Santa is really a mashup of Odin, Saint Nicholas, spirits, and folklore. Santa Claus is a blending of Saint Nick. Um, he gave gifts to children. He is the patron saint of children. With Odin, who was the long beard, sky travel, judging good bad children on Yule, and other European spirits like Father Christmas, which is what we call Santa Claus now, Sinterklaas, and the gnome like Nissi, creating the modern jolly gift bringing with his reindeer, a softer version of Odin's magical horse Sleipnir, and elves. Uh, Such a fascinating thing to me because we, as children, I should say, we never were taught any of that. We just grew up on the Christian Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas tradition. So
Sure. Yeah, yeah, 100%. And that's something that most people don't know, and you learn that through channels like this, right? We didn't learn about it until we started doing the podcast and having to do research and whatnot, and listening to other podcasts
right.
that taught this stuff. But seeing such a diverse change from uh, prior to Santa Claus, obviously with Odin, to this modern day Santa Claus is drastic. Because back then, even when we were growing up, there's this idea that can do not do good and bad, but he can do good but also punish, right? And the punishment is typically leaving coal. But even today, that has changed already in our adulthood, right? Because now we no longer have Santa Claus leaving coal. Instead, uh, we have the Krampus showing up for children who are bad and carrying them away in his bag, or the Yule cat who's going to come eat them. So we basically created a new version of Santa, an evolved version, which is nothing but good all the time. And for those that are bad, the people that are bad, he just simply does them other with rather than punishing. And so there's like a big loss of fear between the early days of the Yule and, of course, commercialization of Santa himself. And commercialization of Christmas is obviously one of the uh, biggest draws to the holiday nowadays because it's no longer about the traditions. It's no longer really about the ancient traditions or even the modern ones. It's all about money, money, money. It's how much can you spend to get the big gift, how much companies can make by selling these big gifts. And we see that over and over again. We see how much earlier Christmas starts every single year. I mean, this year I was seeing Christmas stuff in August, which is asinine. I should not be seeing Christmas stuff in stores in August.
Yeah.
Uh, but every single year they moved, and these commercial companies try to move the holiday up to earn more money earlier on in the season and basically pinch the penny. Now, as both a society and culture, we became less afraid of poverty, the unknown, or strict religious dogma, and instead shifted our focus from survival and spiritual awe to material consumption, allowing businesses to turn Christmas into a massive consumer event, driven by the gift-giving sales and secular symbolisms like Santa and trees, rather than just its traditional religious meaning, creating a cycle of stress and overspending, which, if you know, most of us are probably pretty stressed right now, knowing that tomorrow's Christmas Eve, and probably don't even have all of our gifts that we need to buy. And I think a key word there is need to buy, because I think we all feel a need to have to buy stuff.
Yeah, well, and with the commercialism, yeah, we feel we have to give gifts when and I guess back when it wasn't as commercialized, the gifts were still you felt you needed to give gifts just to represent the gifts that were given to Christ. Um but it kind of went from giving the gifts as an offering to giving them to other people, even though it's not a representation of their birthday, but of Christ's birthday.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so now the real question is when it comes to these old traditions, are we safer or are we just less aware? And I think I truly believe that as a society, we're just less aware. But I would love to hear your guys' comments or answers if you want to put them in the comments or in the chat right now. Uh, yeah, it's one of those things that I don't think that we are safer from these old gods. It's just we're so ingrained into electronics now that we've kind of lost a lot of that.
Yeah. The new gods, if you will.
Yeah. Now, instead of final thoughts, as I always do, I thought, you know what? It'd be fun for us to think about our favorite things about Christmas and memories from Christmas past. I know we've done this in the past, but it's always fun to kind of reminisce a little.
Hmm.
So, what are some of your favorite things about Christmas?
I mean, Christmas music. There's not too many people who love Christmas music anymore, but I still do. I enjoy it. It's funny how many people I meet who just hate when I turn on the radio and this Christmas music. It's sad. It's really sad. But yeah, so Christmas music is a big thing, and it's a short time. It's usually from Thanksgiving until well the day after Christmas, so about a month. And then on top of that, I would say it's just the feeling of like what do you call it, like the Christmas spirit in the air. You know, it's like this light heartedness that's just a kind of playfulness, if you will, that I feel like is often overshadowing everything. It's just kind of there hovering. At least for me, it is in most cases, uh, and that includes obviously the TV shows that we tend to see, the Christmas shows, the Christmas movies, along with the Christmas music, and all the holiday traditions, eggnog, and nowadays peppermint mocha stuff, right?
Hmm.
Like this is all parts that I personally enjoy. Cookies, fresh baked cookies in the oven, and cold milk. And those are things that I typically don't enjoy much of throughout the rest of the year. What about you?
Well, I do love listening to Christmas music. I just wish that radio stations would at least give it until December 1st before they start playing them. Um, but like you mentioned too, stores are pushing it well before that already too. So,
Hmm.
um, but really just the coming together. And it's very rare these days, mostly because of lives have gotten busier, and I think that's all the more reason to embrace that time during Christmas is to really be thankful that you get that time with your family. Um, I have, of course, love the sweet treats and the food. Um, yeah, it used to be, getting presents, but at this point in my life, I honestly don't care if I get Christmas presents or not. If I do, great. If not, it was one of those things that kind of died away from me as an adult.
I feel like
Uh,
it's something that probably dies away for a lot of us because there's not that childlike joy anymore. Like I don't
mhm.
stay awake at night anticipating Christmas morning anymore.
No,
Something
yeah.
that just doesn't exist. Same with waiting, trying my hardest to fall asleep so Santa will show up. Right? I'm not waiting for Santa no more. But maybe
Most
some
of the
people
time,
are.
I can't fall asleep because my brain's just going 100 miles a minute.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the thing that happens with adulthood and just growing up. Um, but yeah, no, I agree. There are obviously some things I think just naturally fade away. But I will admit, like seeing that joy on my nieces, for example, that kind of takes me back to my childhood and some of the
Yeah.
things I remember from back then, seeing how happy they are and living vicariously through them, through their childhood. I'm thinking like they're waiting for Santa. They're waiting. They can hear bells or they can see Rudolph in the sky or all these different things. And it's like I thankfully I still am very imaginative and I still can think of those things and cherish them. But it's not the same. It'll never be the same.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's been talked about a lot that, as we grow older, just like we talk a lot about psychic or medium type gifts, the magic dies as an adult. It's kind of sad, really, but it's just a natural part of life, I guess.
Well, I think it's not more so, but I think in part it's because of the influence that the world has on us as we grow older.
Yeah.
And we start to see some of the hard times. We start to witness them ourselves personally. Um, and so, yeah, back, at least for many of us, when you're children, you don't have much to think about or care about other than Santa and Christmas morning and all the imaginative things you can think of. But nowadays, there's reality too that clicks in, right? And the thought of paying bills on time, having enough money for the Christmas presents, and if you do have enough money, how much debt is it going to put you in for next month? How are you
Right.
going to make up for it? Do you use your credit card, your debit card, your cash? These are all things obviously that take away from the the simple joy of the holiday. And I am one willing to confess that I am one of those that struggle with it. Like today, buying presents, I have the money to do it, but I was so hesitant. I'm putting that card in. Like, why do I want to do this? Do I want no, you know. Um, and thankfully, I've been blessed this year to have the cash to do that. But last year I did not. And the year prior I did not. So it's one of those things that I think for many of us, it's remembering what the holiday really means and what it meant to you rather than what it means to you currently. I mean, if it means something fantastic, like something good and positive, that's fantastic. But if it's something negative nowadays, I think you have to kind of reminisce on what it once was and try to find that childhood or that childlike wonder again, because that's going to help fill those gaps that you're missing today.
Now, memories from Christmas
Hmm.
past.
Just big family parties at grandma and grandpa's, going, getting there, having all the food ready, the pizza with the anchovies that grandpa would always get. I would not eat those, but he would always have those. The fried chicken, the ham, you name it, everything was there. And then of course sitting around the grandma's Christmas tree
Yeah.
with the snow on it and passing out the presents because the Thanksgiving that a few weeks prior we all would pick names out of a hat or something and we'd all have a single cousin or family member to buy presents for. So that was always a fun time. Always enjoyed it. Always look forward to getting home knowing I was getting Christmas pajamas. And I was going to go sit up in my room and try to fall asleep to some sort of Christmas movie while waiting for Santa to show up. It was like that every year, pretty much. Still is
Yeah.
sometimes, just minus a few things.
Yeah. Well, and I just had the conversation with a friend about, we were talking about, Secret Santa, and uh, I'm like, yeah, I mean, we did do that as kids, but we would get so excited we would just blurt out who we had most of the time,
Yeah.
so everybody knew who they were getting the present from. Um, but yeah, that the shrimp cocktail, which was both Christmas and New Year's for Grandpa. Uh, the anchovy pizza, I still remember. Um, gosh, going to both grandmas' houses, one for Christmas Eve, one for Christmas Day. Um, and just the warmth that we would feel during that time of year,
Yeah.
not from a fire, but from family. Um, but yeah, the fake fireplace going at Grandpa Cancellari's house. I remember that. You still have it, I believe.
I do. It's in my room.
Um, gosh, what else? Honestly, waking up Christmas morning
Hmm.
and just trying actually, even Christmas night. I remember waking up like well before the sun was out. I'd wake up at midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and run down to see, or out to see, if Santa had come yet. And sometimes my brother would wake up and we would both kind of just look around, grab gifts and shake them a little bit. But I'd have to be like, no, 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 don't do it too loud. They're going to, mom and dad are going to hear.
Right.
Um, yeah. And I think, looking back at all of the gifts as we got as kids, the one that still I remember loving the most is My Pet Monster.
Okay.
Um, and Teddy Ruxpin and Grub were the other ones that were really big ones as a kid. Do you remember any that were like significant to you for
Yeah.
gifts?
Three of them actually offhand. One is a little Jurassic Park, original Jurassic Park Velociraptor, which is actually sitting behind me on a bookshelf that I still have. I don't remember how old I was when I got it. Yeah, it was before third grade. Second, third grade is probably when I got that. And then another is another Jurassic Park toy, a little Tyrannosaurus Rex, which was probably about a foot tall, about 12 inches tall or so. And I used to carry that thing around like as a baby T Rex with me, and I was pretend it was a baby T Rex. Uh, yeah, I still have him around here somewhere too. And then the other what's it called? Is it called Creepy Crawlers? Is that the one?
Oh yeah, Creeper Crawlers was
But,
awesome.
yeah, creepy crawlers, and I have a fourth, which wasn't mine; it was my sister's, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. Was Easy Bake Oven, so we always make brownies and stuff with that.
Well, I had a boys version of that where you mixed like stuff into a monster head and got monster
Oh
brains.
yeah, I had that thing too.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Heck was that?
Um, I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, creepy crawlers, and then hearing my mom say, "Oh yeah, we had those when we were kids," and it's like, what? They just basically recycled them and brought them back out for the new generation.
Those things are cool. I love the smell of the burnt plastic that you would get as you're cooking those things on steel
And
plate.
it was more like glue
You would
because
not
it was
see that
liquid.
today's age. That is not a thing. Back then, we didn't care about cancer.
I mean, to some degree, a lot of people don't today either.
Well, yeah, but it's like you're not giving an 8-year-old some plastic to pour
Oh,
into
for
the
children,
little
right?
oven.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that when we were kids is not really safe anymore. And even when our parents were kids and their parents were kids, like
Mhm.
the stuff that was given as gifts was much more dangerous in the past.
Yeah. Fun
Which
fact: because of my
good.
nostalgia, I still have that creepy crawler machine, but I have yet to find a proper light bulb that will cook.
Probably because they don't really make them
Probably not.
anymore.
Probably not.
But just like in a Christmas Story where he gets the BB gun and then his mother is like, "Don't shoot your eye out."
Yep. Oh, that's another one. I mean, I every Christmas Eve, me and your brother watch it. Every Christmas Eve, we watch your Christmas Story, and we've been watching that since we were little kids.
Yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
seen it way too many times, like literally countless. I do the whole movie myself.
Well, and Jason Hewlett, was it Jason that brought it up that maybe it wasn't him. Somebody brought up that oh yeah, it was shot in Canada. Well, yes and no. It was partly shot in Canada, partly shot in Cleveland, Ohio. So that's why I love it, is because we have the house in Cleveland. And it's just a good movie too, but um all right. So something I did want to bring up is, if you are a paratruther, you love the show, you love interacting with us, you love being a part of what we talk about, I highly suggest getting into the Facebook group that we created, Paratruthers Facebook group. Um, I did start releasing some lore cards that are only going to be released to our paratruthers. So if you want specific content that you're not going to see on our other social medias, get in there, and all you got to do is just join the group. It's free to join. And there's no weird questions or anything. We just ask that you be respectful and post stuff that is relevant to the paranormal. Don't be posting a link for a show that's about politics or something like that.
Or any business
Um,
stuff. You're not
yeah,
selling anything in this.
right.
No, no sales.
That too. Um, but that is all we've got for our Christmas episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Uh, I do have to say that I hope you all have a very safe and happy New Year. I'm sorry, Christmas. We'll have New Year
Quit jumping
next
around.
week. Yeah. Uh, and yeah, be safe out there, and Merry Christmas, everybody. Um, any last comments?
No.
Okay. Um, as we said at the beginning here, this has been a live show on 107.7 FM New Orleans, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast, and United Public Radio Network. Until next week, where you will find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin.
And I'm Eric. Peace.